So I've just completed my 1000th order as a freelance music producer on Fiverr. So I wanted to take this chance to tell you 10 things that I have learned from this whole experience over the past 5 years of doing freelance services on Fiverr. These 10 points is information I definitely think you need to know if you're someone who's an aspiring music producer and you want to start completing orders as a producer and working with artists independently. Whether it's on Fiverr or off, there is a lot of key points here to break down. So we're not going to waste any more time. If you are new to this channel, make sure you smash the subscribe button as it's the best way to support the channel. And let's deep dive into these 10 points. Now for this first point, it may sound a little bit random and like it doesn't actually give any advice at all, but I just want to reassure you it is possible to make a full-time living as a music producer. If you're someone who's watching this right now and you're in the early stages and you're not making any money as a music producer, or maybe you want to expand your avenues of income, trust me, 5 years ago I was exactly where you were. I was typing in on YouTube frantically all the time anyone who can give me any sort of advice at all on how to make any money as a music producer. And there were times where I didn't think it was possible because I didn't know what to do, where to start, or how I could actually go about making any money as a music producer. But that's when I personally came across Fiverr. And the other 9 points that I'm going to mention in this video have all contributed to this point 1, where I can say I make a full-time income as a music producer. It's not just down to Fiverr, it's also down to the principles that have been applied to this. So from the 1000 orders and the experience that I've gained from doing this, it has had a lovely knock-on effect into other incomes I have as a music producer. But I just wanted to make that point. If you're someone watching this right now and you really think that you're in a bit of a rut and you don't know how to make money as a music producer, trust me, I was exactly where you were 5 years ago. So I'm going to go on to point number 2, and this one's a very important one. I mention this a lot, even. Now this second point, this is one of the most important bits of information I ever give, and it's just one word. It is the word niche. Now for those of you who subscribe to my channel, you're probably sick of me banging this drum, but niche has been the fundamental factor from the early stages of getting momentum and starting to get orders on Fiverr, specifically on this site, because I'm a pop producer. But when I was uploading my services onto Fiverr, the one thing I found was everyone was also doing that as well. So I thought, how can I actually niche this further so specific needs can be met for artists typing it in the search results? So for me personally, I took a little bit of time searching through Fiverr, thinking about the sort of things that people might want in terms of the service, and I noticed at the time there was a gap in the market for ghost songwriting. Believe it or not, 5 years ago when I was on Fiverr, not many people were doing that service, so I started a ghost songwriting service where it was specifically that and nothing else. And this one service ended up taking off. So for the next year that preceded it, I was getting a lot of orders from this one specific service. But my other service, which is like pop songwriting or pop production, nothing was happening with it because that wasn't niche enough. It was too broad, wasn't ranking high in the search results. So I was getting outcompeted by other producers on here who have been on Fiverr for longer, have more reviews, and just have more clients who just go to them because they trust them. So without niching in the early stages on Fiverr, I definitely think it would have been a lot slower building that momentum that's got me to this 1000 orders. Point number 3 that I want to make is customer service is everything. And I mean, it is everything. You think when you get into a career as a music producer that you just make the music with the artist, it's fun, it's a collaboration. But when you work on freelance sites like Fiverr, Airgigs, Sound Better, People Per Hour, there is a degree of customer service that has to be implemented to make it a good experience, because this is reviews based, this is transactional based, and you really do have to factor that in if you want to go down this avenue, because from the first minute that you start the order, there is this opportunity to get good reviews and good ratings from other artists, which can give you a knock-on effect in the long term where you're going to be more trusted, you're going to have them reviews, kind of like a restaurant. You don't go to a restaurant which has poor reviews, you go to a restaurant that has good reviews, if you can be bothered to look at the reviews. And it's the same for freelance services. You really need to focus on making sure that the customer is getting the best experience. Notice how I said customer, it's a force of habit nowadays, but if we want to say artist, you got to make sure that you're really factoring all their needs, wants, requirements for the project that you're working on with them, and always try to feel like you're going above and beyond without doing certain things which I'm going to mention later on in this video. But yes, customer service is everything. Okay, point 4 that I want to make, this is going to be really reassuring to hear because I didn't hear it and it got me very paranoid at times that this might not be the career for me. And that is, you're not always going to get it right for the artist when you work with them, especially when it comes to sites like Fiverr and stuff, you're doing sometimes a lot of orders in a week. It's not like if you're working with an artist outside of any platform like this, where you can take your time with them, you can drop FaceTimes in between. There is deadlines, and it can be very kind of pressurizing, and it can make the whole experience a little bit too stressful than it maybe needs to be. And there's been situations where either sometimes the stress has got the better of me, or maybe the project just hasn't been right for me, because again, when someone places an order on Fiverr, sometimes you don't even get a say in if you want to do the project or not, and it might not be for you. It might not be the song for you, or the artist might have other ideas, and you can't kind of meet in the middle on it. So you got to be prepared that when you do transactional kind of collaborations on music, when it comes to selling on freelance sites as a music producer, there might be this little elephant in the room that crops up at times. And the best way you can deal with it is what I said, point 3, customer service is everything. Early on, if you get their sort of needs and requirements down to a T and keep that consistent communication, that can be the best way for you to avoid any situations like this. Point number 5, and I do feel like this goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway, is it takes time to get consistent results. Because firstly, when it comes to growing an income as a music producer, you need to allow years for it to marinate and become consistent. Because in the early stages, you may find that you might get a couple of orders here, a couple of orders there, but it's not going to be consistent. And it may be one of them things where if you have something like a part-time job, you feel like it might be too much to just completely drop the part-time job and go straight to selling freelance services, because one month might be great, the next month you might earn nothing, and if you've got bills to pay, that can be very stressful. So you just got to keep in mind that when you are doing this kind of avenue as a music producer, you need to be patient with it, you need to build up the consistency, and how you can do that, in my best advice, would be to try and build good customer relations with the people you're working with and really try and get repeat business. It's repeat business which has kept my Fiverr income consistent. For example, every month out of, let's say, 80% of the orders I do is probably repeat business, and 20% now is new. So it really reassures me that I'm going to get an income in so I can pay off mortgages on the house, that all the bills, and be able to afford to live. And point number 8 is to know your worth. Now, this is something that is not only going to save you time, it's also going to make you more money in the long term, and it's also going to be one of them things which kind of spots the red flags in whether this is a project you should be taking on or not when you work on freelance sites. Now, you won't know your worth straight away, because when you first start selling freelance services, if you're selling on a site where you get ranked, you really want to try and have competitive prices at the start, just to get them couple of reviews across the line early on, get some orders in, get some buyers who really like your service, because once you got them, you can start building momentum, and then you can put your prices up later on. But also sometimes as well, depending on what the demands are of the artist, they may ask you to do X amount of work or do something for the project, but then they have deadlines for it, or maybe you have X amount of work on and you need to kind of try and distribute the work out accordingly, sense the priority. And then at that point, it becomes the quality versus quantity debate. If you take too much work on for a low price, you'll be doing all this work, your hours will be filled up, but you're not earning as much. However, if you get lots of work, you put your prices up, maybe you get less work, but because you're earning higher, that means your income balances out and it gives you more time to work on these projects. So you kind of need to, as you go along, decide, especially with X amount of time in the day, how much work are you wanting to put in per project per day, per week, per month. So it means that you have a nice balanced schedule, you're earning at a rate that you feel is valuable to your skills, but it also feels like at the same time you're not overcharging on the service you provided. And unfortunately, I can't tell you how much to charge because it's completely up to you. Point number 6 is do not be afraid to turn down work. Now, this is something which, if you're someone who's in the early stages, you might think I need to take on as much work as possible, but trust me, sometimes, as I mentioned earlier in the early stages of point number 4, where you aren't always going to get it right, that can sometimes be the kind of correlation between the two. Sometimes the project just isn't a good fit for you, and I will be honest, sometimes it's down to the artist not really knowing what they want. Sometimes it could be the artist knowing what they want but you not knowing what they want, and sometimes there can just be this kind of confusion across the whole thing where it's just not working, whether it's because you specialize in certain like niches of music, or the artist has this set sound that they want it to be in their head and you just can't seem to meet them in the middle in it, or whatever it is. There's always a reason, but you kind of got to spot the red flags earlier on. If you feel like an artist is kind of demanding too much, especially for what it is you're charging for them, don't be afraid to pull back, because if you can minimize the amount of stress in your life, you're going to enjoy this process a lot more, and in the long term you're going to be able to sustain it a lot more, because if it stresses you and eats you up too much, you're not going to want to continue it, and that is how people end up giving up on these sorts of things. Now this next point I feel like is very relevant to what we've said so far, but it's actually impossible to produce your best work every time, and once you accept that, you're going to have a lot better time and a lot less pressure in completing this amount of orders on a site. Because I have days where I wake up, I make beats, for example, for my beat selling business, where I make a beat, it's not my best work, but I upload it anyway. And that's how I've been able to upload a massive catalog worth of beats, and over time get really good at producing a beat a day, because I accepted that I make the beat, I don't think too much about it. So with a clear mind, I get to the end result a lot quicker. And it's the same with freelance services as well. The second you think like, okay, I've done as much as I can with this track, and then submit it, and then that's at that point where, especially on sites like Fiverr, you can get requests for revisions, or you can get the artist input. But with that all said, sometimes it's just not going to work out, and that's okay. I kind of wanted to say that as a reassuring point. Okay, so this next point is very important, because it's basically all about, if you want to get into doing this now, you need to start yesterday. What I mean by that is, as I said, mentioned in previous points, it takes a while to build up a kind of income like this. So you need to start today. If you want to sell freelance services as a music producer, get yourself on Fiverr, get yourself on Air Gigs, get yourself on Sound Better, anything like that. I mean, I know for some of them, Air Gigs and Fiverr are free, but with Sound Better, you do have to pay a fee if you want to be ranked a little bit higher, which I think sometimes is a little bit touch and go, and a little bit of a risk, especially if you don't have the money to be paying like $80, $90 a month to be ranked higher. But you definitely just need to jump in the deep end and get on with it, because that's exactly what I did, and I have no regrets, not looking back at all. And then lastly, point number 10 is, do not be afraid to go out of your comfort zone. This is what really starts to improve you as a producer and build up your skill set, because when I first started, I was just in the genre of pop, and pop specifically, and I never thought I'd veer out of that. But I started over the years to have people message me asking about rock tracks, country, acoustic, EDM, dance, even drill. I never listened to drill, never produced drill in my life, but through Fiverr I started doing that specifically. And sometimes it was testing them limits which made me learn a lot more. Crossing genres made me actually better at producing work that I was comfortable making, because I kind of already done the hard bit and the stressful bit of trying to think of new ideas, not really know what I'm doing. So as soon as I jump back into something I know what I'm doing, like pop music, all of a sudden it's a lot more easy and it's a lot more efficient. And also you learn a lot of things from different genres which you can actually bring into other projects, maybe in genres you're more comfortable with. So I would not be afraid to get out your comfort zone, work in different genres, work with artists maybe that the sound you didn't think you'd normally work with. And also maybe if you're a producer, try and get better at mixing and mastering or songwriting, so you can like offer them services as well. Once you're actually in your niche and things are going well, that's when you can really start to try and spot the different avenues that maybe you can branch out on to get that little bit extra income. And over the couple of years, it will get you an extra 10, 20 orders a year at least. But yeah guys, that's 10 things I've learned from uploading 1,000 orders on Fiverr. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you smash the subscribe button, as it's the best way to support the channel. Drop any questions below if you've got any more questions after watching this video. And until then guys, keep making music, and I'll see you in the next video.